He never had a name, never got paid, but every morning he wiped clean the footsteps of a city that never once looked down to see him. And then one day, he was gone. No one noticed, except for one warm loaf of bread, left waiting for someone who didn't return. And from that loaf, a buried truth began to unravel. A nameless man was beaten bloody and arrested for cleaning up a sidewalk. Hard to believe, the man who bled was the one put in handcuffs. This isn't a movie script. This is America. And it happened on a street corner you've probably walked by without ever looking twice. Every Tuesday and Friday, just after sunrise, Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett took the same quiet turn off Martin Luther King Boulevard and pulled into the corner lot of Mayfield and Sons. She always ordered the same thing, a black rye loaf, fresh from the oven, dense, warm, still singing steam. It wasn't the bread she craved, not really. It was the ritual, the familiarity, the way the air changed when she stepped out of her car, and the scent of burnt crust and cinnamon salt clung to her coat like memory. But it wasn't just her loaf that kept her coming back. It was his. There was always a second loaf, given, not sold, offered, not asked for. Each time she arrived, it felt as if the moment had just quietly ended, or was just beginning, right before her eyes. An old black man, wrapped in a jacket too large for the decade, stood outside the side window. His shoes looked thin, his back bent a little more each season. He stood in silence. No knock, no bow. Just there, waiting with quiet patience. And then Henry, white hair, worn apron, face of permanent disapproval, would push open the narrow window, hand him a full loaf, and nod. No words, no thanks, no record. The exchange felt like a secret, one nobody wanted to interrupt. But Crockett remembered another morning, a campaign stop years ago. She was driving past the same bakery earlier than usual, and there he was, the same man, same coat, same silence, being chased off the property with a broom, and Henry yelling, "Go somewhere else! This ain't no shelter." It was the kind of moment that lingers longer than it should, the kind of anger that echoes in a voice even after it's gone. That was the Henry she remembered, and yet here he was now, handing out bread in silence, as if some page had been turned while no one was watching. One morning, Crockett couldn't help herself. She stepped inside, let the bell above the door chime once, and leaned slightly across the counter as Henry bagged her order. "You know him?" she asked as casually as one could ask about something that had become a routine between ghosts. Henry didn't look up. He tied the bag, straightened the wax paper, dusted flour from his wrist. Then finally, unquietly, he said, "Used to think I did. Thought I hated him, actually." He paused. His eyes drifted toward the window, to the empty space where the man would return again tomorrow and the next day. "Now I'm not so sure. Maybe I was just wrong." That was all. No confession, no backstory. Just those 8 words. But Crockett, who had long since learned how to read the spaces between silence, recognized them for what they were. A truth too small for headlines, but too heavy to ignore. And truths like that, they never arrive alone. The next time she saw Henry, he spoke first. "You ever notice how some things feel clean even before you touch them?" he said, wiping down the counter with a rag. Like the space already knows someone cared. She looked up, and that's when he told her. It was a morning after rain, not storm rain, just the quiet kind that makes everything shimmer. He'd come in early, 5 a.m., maybe earlier, the sky still the color of bruised denim. When he turned the corner to unlock the shop's front door, he stopped. The stone steps leading up to the bakery, the same ones that usually collected gum wrappers, soda lids, stray leaves, were dry, spotless, gleaming, not swept, not blown, wiped, in slow circular motions, the way someone does when they're not just cleaning, but apologizing. He didn't know what to think. Then he noticed the trash bins, 2 of them, neatly repositioned, no overflow, no broken bottles. Even the glass shards from the night before, gone. He stared at the entryway like it was a confession, and just then, A familiar voice broke through the alley wall. You saw it too, huh? Marcia, the bodega owner next door. Up before the streetlights faded, sharp tongue, sharper eyes. She was leaning halfway out her back door, cigarette smoldering in hand, wearing that robe she never quite bothered to tie. Little ones were at it again last night, she said. Kicking cans, throwing stuff. One of them spit on your sign. I almost called it in. Then she flicked her ash toward the ground, and her voice lowered. But he came out. Your guy. Didn't say a word, just stood there. They froze. Then he started picking everything up. Didn't look angry. Didn't wait to be seen. Just cleaned. Henry didn't answer. He just nodded once. And that morning, for the first time in nearly a year, he opened the shop without picking up the broom. But the next morning, something else was missing. The man. The loaf was there. Same place, same hour, still warm from the oven. But the step was empty. No shoes, no stillness, no man waiting with his silence. Henry was already at the counter when Crockett walked in. He looked up only once, then turned away quickly, busying himself with folding parchment that didn't need folding. She glanced toward the ledge by the window. It's still there, she said softly. He nodded. Didn't come this morning. Didn't come last night either. She waited. Then he added, almost like a man confessing something small but unforgivable. There were a few dark spots on the step, dried. At first I thought it was sauce from someone's sandwich, but no, not sauce. His voice caught on that last word. Crockett didn't speak right away. She stepped closer to the window, as if maybe by standing in the exact place the man once stood, she could will him back. You think something happened to him? She asked. Henry didn't answer. Not directly. Instead, he reached behind the counter and set the untouched loaf on a clean towel. Then said almost to himself, He's never missed 2 mornings. Not even in freezing rain. Something's wrong. She pulled out her phone. Let me check something. She tapped the screen, then pressed the receiver to her ear. Maya, it's me. Any overnight arrests near Main Street? Male, black, mid-50s to 60s? No ID? She waited. Henry didn't move, just stared at the bread like it might answer for him. The voice on the line came back. Yeah, one guy. Picked up around 2 a.m. Disturbance of the peace. Didn't have any documents. He's at the holding center on Jefferson. Crockett hung up. Her jaw clenched. Henry looked at her. No questions, just waiting. It's him, she said. Henry took off his apron, folded it slowly, set it on the counter. I'll drive, he said. She raised an eyebrow, just slightly. You don't have to. I know, he cut in gently, but I want to. The drive was short, but it felt longer. Neither of them talked, but the silence didn't hang heavy. It sat like company that had finally been invited in. Henry pulled up outside the holding center and shifted into park. He didn't move right away. I used to think giving a man bread made me generous, he said, eyes still forward. Turns out, I was just late. Crockett opened the door, stepped out. Maybe, she said, but you showed up. That counts more than most. Henry followed. The front desk of the Jefferson Holding Center smelled like floor polish and paper trails. The kind of scent that clings to unasked questions. A young officer, probably fresh out of the academy, and barely old enough to have regrets, looked up from his monitor just in time to see the flash of Crockett's congressional badge. Congresswoman, he said, standing up so quickly his chair squeaked backward. Don't salute, she replied, already walking past. Just show me what you're using to justify keeping an injured man behind bars. That threw him off balance. Not physically, but procedurally. He blinked. We already pulled the footage from the convenience store across from the bakery, ma'am. It's in the file. Then you won't mind playing it for me? She didn't ask, she ordered. Because some injustices don't deserve diplomacy. Henry followed silently. His boots echoed behind them in the hallway, hands tucked deep in his pockets, like they were holding in more than just cold. The viewing room was small and badly lit. Like most truths, it seemed allergic to full light. The monitor was already cued. We'll start from 2:01 a.m., the officer said, half defensive. Crockett didn't respond. The screen flickered to life. Static. Grayscale. Then sidewalk. 6 boys in frame. Mid-teens. Maybe early 20s. One leaned on the glass. One kicked a bin. Another pretended to mime punching someone. No audio, just grain. And then he appeared from the far left corner. The coat, the cane, the shuffle that made him look like time itself had started to limp. He walked toward them, slowly. The boys backed up a few steps. One pointed, another flinched. Then the footage cut. The officer hit pause. "As you can see," he said, suddenly feeling older than his uniform. He was brandishing the cane. They looked intimidated. One of them even said he tried to swing. "And your evidence for that is—" "The footage." "Without sound," Crockett replied. "Correct." "And no second angle?" "Just that one, ma'am." Henry, who had been silent until now, finally spoke. His voice low, rough, like it had gathered dust from too many things left unsaid. "We used to have a camera out front," he said, eyes still fixed on the hands buried deep in his coat pockets. "I installed it after someone busted the glass once, but it didn't last long. The kids around here found it, took sticks to it, threw rocks, happened 3 nights in a row." He shook his head slightly. "I got fed up, took it down, figured no one really cared about that damn stoop anyway. Turns out I was wrong." Crockett didn't answer, but she glanced his way, and she knew someone had cared. Someone had cleaned up every shard of that broken glass, quietly, patiently, never needing a camera to prove it. She walked closer to the screen. "Let me ask you something. Where's the trash can?" The officer looked up, confused. "What?" "The trash can," she repeated, tapping the edge of the monitor. "There's always one here, right by that window." "I'm not sure. He probably came to pick it up, like he's done dozens of times. You didn't think to ask why a man would walk into a group of kids at 2 a.m. unless he had a reason?" The officer didn't answer. Crockett turned to Henry. "Did you ever see him raise that cane at anyone?" "Only to lift himself off the ground," Henry said softly. Crockett looked back to the officer. "You saw a stick and called it a weapon. You saw a man walking and called it aggression. You saw a black face in a shadow and thought, 'Here comes trouble.'" She let that sit. "But what if you'd had a wider angle?" The officer hesitated. Defense drained from his shoulders. "There's a traffic camera," he offered, unsure. "Facing which direction?" "South, across the intersection." "Which would have caught the full sidewalk." "Yes, but that requires civil liaison approval." "Then I'll make the call myself." 15 minutes later, the city tech arrived. No greetings, no handshakes, just a nod and a hard drive full of something no one wanted to see. Until now. Crockett didn't wait. "Fremont and Main. Traffic cam. Start at 1:58 a.m. The feed loaded. Streetlights washed the sidewalk in a sickly yellow. The kind of light that shows everything and still hides the truth. 6 boys entered the frame, loud and careless. One threw a bottle. It exploded across the storefront like dry thunder. Another kicked over a bin. 2 grabbed the bakery door and yanked, laughing. But then came the part no one mentioned. He appeared, from the far edge. Worn coat, stooped shoulders, the cane. He didn't charge, didn't shout. He simply walked in, and they noticed him. Turned, closed in. There were no words on the tape, but you could feel the temperature change. One shoved him. Another ripped the cane from his hands. Then came the fist. And another. He staggered, tried to protect his face. The final punch hit him square. And he dropped. Blood. Fast. Dark. Final. And then they ran. But he didn't scream. He didn't fight back. He got up. Slowly. Shakily. He picked up the trash can, put it upright. Started gathering garbage with his bare, bleeding hands. He used the corner of his coat to wipe blood off the step. And then, like nothing happened, he sat down. In the same corner this city never noticed. The video paused. No one moved. "That blood," Crockett said, her voice calm and cutting, "is not hypothetical. It's not circumstantial. It's the result of a man being assaulted. And no one in your department even asked who hit him." The officer opened his mouth. She didn't let him speak. "He was attacked. He was bleeding. And instead of help, you gave him handcuffs." Henry's jaw clenched. "He didn't yell. They hit him, and he still tried to clean it up. like it was his fault the world broke again. Crockett stepped forward, tapped the screen, right where the blood had splattered. You know what hurts the most? Not the glass, not even the bruises. It's what came after. You saw a man hurt, and you called him dangerous because he didn't fit the story you're used to telling. Then softer, but even heavier, you didn't treat him like a man. You treated him like a disturbance, like a line in a report you didn't want to write. Henry added quietly, I've seen drunk kids passed out on that same step get bottled water and a pat on the back. But this man who bled, stood back up and made things right, he gets a record? Crockett's voice dropped to a whisper. He didn't belong in a cell. He deserved a chair, a coffee, and a question that starts with, Sir, are you all right? Silence filled the room, and then finally she said, But that only happens to the people this system decides are worth seeing. No one answered, because everyone in the room, the officer, the tech, even the man behind the desk who hadn't said a word, understood exactly what she meant. And worse, they realized they hadn't seen him. Not really. They saw paperwork, noise, a box to check, but not the man, not the blood, not the silence he chose when pain could have justified screams. The young officer cleared his throat, barely audible. Do you want us to process release, ma'am? Crockett didn't even look at him. We'll do it ourselves. She signed the bail paperwork herself. Henry stood beside her, hands in his coat pockets, eyes on the floor. No one spoke. No one apologized. Because some apologies come too late, and others only matter when backed by what comes after. They waited by the exit. When the door opened, he walked out, still bruised, still limping slightly. His hand was bandaged now, loosely as if even first aid had been reluctant. He didn't ask why they were there. He didn't look surprised, as if part of him had always known the world would forget, and then, maybe, remember. Henry stepped forward. No speeches, no dramatic offers, just an old man holding a paper bag and speaking like he had all the time in the world. You know, I used to wipe that place down every day like it mattered, but turns out it mattered more when someone else did it and didn't ask for anything back. I got a kitchen that could use someone like that. You in? The man didn't speak. He took the bag, held it, nodded once, then turned toward the door. Not the back, not the alley, not the side street where people enter so they don't make customers uncomfortable. He walked, slow, steady, through the front door of Mayfield and Sons, not as someone to be tolerated, not as someone asking, but as someone who had already proven, quietly, he belonged. He walked in through the front door, not once, but every morning after that, same hour, same step. He didn't clock in, didn't wear an apron. He just moved with the rhythm of the place, like someone who wasn't new, just finally let in. He took no ownership, made no declarations. He swept quietly, wiped counters, rearranged nothing but disorder. And when customers arrived, he would already be sitting in the far corner, near the supply shelf, sipping coffee like he'd been there forever. Henry never asked for his ID, never filed a W-2. They didn't talk about schedules or shifts. The arrangement was as unspoken as it was understood. He was there, and things stayed steady when he was. Sometimes Henry would open the shop and find something already done. Bins lined, towel buckets filled, air just faintly carrying the scent of lemon cleaner. He never heard the man arrive. It was as if the place let him in before anyone else. One morning, Henry noticed something on the back wall behind the counter. A small wooden plaque, no frame, no gloss. Just nailed into the wall, crooked and quiet. It read, "There are those who hold a place steady, long before we realize we needed them to." He didn't ask who put it there. He didn't need to. Instead, he picked up a coffee mug, filled it to the brim, walked to the far end of the counter, and placed it, as always, in front of the man without a name. The man nodded, slow. That was it. No speeches, no ceremony. Just one more morning held together by someone no one had to instruct, because he'd already taught the place what quiet care looked like. One morning, just like any other, the city hadn't quite woken up. A light mist still clung to the bakery's front window. A young journalist stepped into Mayfield and Sons. She came in for a loaf of bread, nothing more. But what made her stop wasn't the smell of rising dough. It was the front steps, spotless, shining, perfectly clean. Not a single leaf, not a footprint, not even a crumb. She turned to Henry, who was quietly wiping the counter, and she asked, "Who comes this early to clean like that?" Henry didn't answer at first. He just nodded toward the back corner of the shop. There sat an older man, hunched slightly, holding a cup of black coffee. The sunlight poured through the window, resting gently on his shoulder. Like it had always been meant to find him there. Henry said softly, "That's him. The man who made me believe in kindness again." The journalist took a picture. She posted it with a simple caption, "The man who sweeps the sidewalk," and something inside the rest of us. The story spread, but not because it was loud, because it was true. People started coming, not for bread, but to shake his hand, to give him a warm drink, to say thank you without needing to say much else. Some left notes. Some brought their kids just to show them what quiet goodness looks like. One little boy gave him a drawing, a picture of the man sweeping beneath a rising sun. An old woman leaned in close and whispered, "My grandson says seeing you every morning makes him feel safe." But the man never changed. He still came early, still swept, still wiped the windows, still made things quietly right. And every afternoon, before anyone could ask what he needed, he was gone. One day someone asked how he felt about being famous. He smiled, slow, calm, gentle, and said, "I didn't come here to be known. I just came to keep things from falling apart." No one replied. They didn't have to, because somehow everyone understood. It's not applause that holds a place together. It's presence. Steady, quiet presence. From that day on, Henry hung a small wooden sign behind the counter. No frame. No gloss. Just one truth. The one who steadied the bakery and reminded us what still matters. Now every morning, when the door opens and someone walks in, there's always someone who asks, "Is he here today?" And if Henry nods, even just once, everything feels okay again. Because when he's there, the world somehow stays in one piece.